Ladies and gentlemen, as you settle down, I invite you to close your eyes and allow my words to drift over you like the wind that moves slowly across the northern skies, carrying with it the quiet whispers of ancient times. Tonight, I will speak about Norse mythology, but not in the thrilling tones of epic battles or fiery prophecies. Instead, I will unfold it in a way that is gentle and steady, so that it may lull you into peace and perhaps into sleep. Norse mythology, with its many gods, realms, and sagas, is vast and intricate, but when told softly, it becomes like a long, winding path through an old forest. Let us take that path together, step by step, at a pace that does not hurry, but simply flows onward. At the beginning of Norse mythology, before there was anything else, there was nothing but a great void. This void was called Ginnungagap. On one side of this emptiness was the land of ice and cold, called Niflheim. On the other side was the land of fire and heat, called Muspelheim. The ice from the one side and the fire from the other began to meet in the middle of the void, and from this meeting something new was formed. Out of the melting ice came a giant, a great being named Ymir, who was the first of his kind. Alongside him came a cosmic cow named Audumla, whose milk sustained Ymir. The cow herself licked the salty ice, and from the licking emerged the first of the gods, a figure named Buri, who would become the ancestor of the gods to follow. Ymir gave rise to other giants, while Buri's descendants became the gods, and from the very start there was tension between these families. Odin, who would later be the chief of the gods, was among the grandsons of Buri. Alongside his brothers Vili and Ve, Odin looked at Ymir, this great giant, and decided that the world could not take shape with Ymir still at its center. The brothers killed the giant, and from his immense body they made the world. His flesh became the land, his blood became the seas and rivers, his bones became the mountains, and his skull was set high as the sky. From his hair came the trees, and from his brains the clouds. The sparks from Muspelheim were flung upward to become the stars, and thus the world began to take shape. The gods placed 4 dwarves at the corners of the sky to hold it up, and they named them North, South, East, and West. This was how the world began, not in silence, but from a mixture of fire, ice, destruction, and creation. The gods then made the first humans. They took 2 logs of driftwood from the shore and breathed life into them. Odin gave them spirit, Vili gave them mind, and Ve gave them form and senses. The man they called Ask, and the woman they called Embla, and from them came humankind. The gods gave them Midgard, the realm in the center of the cosmos, as their home, and surrounded it with a great wall made from Ymir's eyebrows to protect it from giants. Around Midgard, other realms were placed. There was Asgard, the home of the gods, high above. There was Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods. Alfheim was the realm of the light elves, Svartalheim for the dwarves, Jotunheim for the giants, and Helheim for the dead. At the center of all stood Yggdrasil, the great world tree, whose roots and branches reached into every part of existence, binding all realms together. Odin and his fellow gods, called the Aesir, were not the only gods. There were also the Vanir, a group associated with fertility and the natural cycles of life. At first the Aesir and Vanir were in conflict, waging a war that shook the world. But after much strife, they made peace, and as a symbol of that peace, some gods of each side lived with the other. From the Vanir came Njord, the god of the sea, and his children, Freyr and Freya. Freyr was associated with prosperity and harvests, while Freya was linked with love, beauty, and magic. These figures joined Odin, Thor, and others in shaping the destiny of gods and humans alike. Among the most famous of the gods was Thor, the thunder god, son of Odin and wielder of the mighty hammer Mjolnir. Thor was strong, fierce against giants, but also a protector of mankind. His hammer could crush mountains, but it also brought blessings, for it was used to consecrate marriages and protect the harvest. Thor rode in a chariot drawn by 2 goats, and his presence was both feared and celebrated. He was simple in some ways, loving food, drink, and battle, yet he was deeply important to the survival of the gods against their enemies. Odin, meanwhile, was a god of wisdom, poetry, and war, but he was not a simple warrior. He constantly sought knowledge, even at great personal cost. To drink from the well of wisdom beneath Yggdrasil, he sacrificed one of his eyes, leaving him with a single gaze that looked both outward and inward. He also hung himself from the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by a spear, to gain the knowledge of runes, the ancient symbols of magic and writing. Odin was always searching, always restless, always preparing for what was to come. Loki, another figure, was not like the others. He was a trickster, sometimes friend to the gods, sometimes their greatest troublemaker. He was not originally of the Aesir but came among them, and his cleverness often brought both help and harm. Loki fathered strange children, including the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jörmungandr, and Hel, who ruled over the land of the dead. The gods feared these children, for prophecies told that they would play roles in great destruction. Fenrir was bound by the gods with a magical chain, after he grew so strong that no normal chain could hold him. The serpent Jörmungandr was cast into the sea that encircles the world, where he grew so large that he encircled all of Midgard. Hel was sent to rule over the realm of the dead, where those who did not die bravely in battle would dwell. Many tales unfold in this mythology, like waves lapping at the shore. There are stories of Thor's journeys to Jotunheim to battle giants, of contests of wit where the gods were humbled, of treasures crafted by dwarves that became symbols of power. There are stories of love, of Freya's necklace, of Odin's wanderings in disguise, of Baldur, the shining god beloved by all, who was slain by mistletoe through the trickery of Loki. Baldur's death was a turning point, a sorrow that foretold darker days to come. The gods tried to bring him back, but their efforts failed because Loki prevented it. This deepened the sense of doom that lay over all things. For Norse mythology is not simply about creation and gods, but about destiny. Central to it is the belief in Ragnarok, the fate of the gods, the great end that would one day arrive. Prophecies told that there would be a long winter, 3 years with no summer, called Fimbulwinter. Chaos would rise, bonds would break, and the enemies of the gods would march. Fenrir would break free of his chains, Jörmungandr would rise from the sea, and Loki, having been bound for his misdeeds, would also return to lead the giants and the dead against the gods. The heavens would split, and fire would spread across the world. Thor would battle the great serpent, and though he would kill it, he would die from its venom. Odin would face Fenrir, but the wolf would swallow him. Odin's son Vidar would avenge him by tearing the wolf apart. Loki and Heimdall, the watchmen of the gods, would slay each other. The fire giant Surtur would spread flames that consumed all, and the world would be destroyed. But from this end came the possibility of a new beginning. Out of the ashes, the world would be remade. A few gods would survive, and 2 humans would emerge from the shelter of Yggdrasil to repopulate the earth. The sun, though destroyed, would have a daughter to carry on its light. Thus the cycle of ending and renewal would continue, and though the old world would pass away, a new one would rise, fresh and green, under a new sun. As you can hear, the myths of the Norse are grand, filled with gods, giants, magic, and fate. Yet told softly, they become like a quiet river flowing steadily, carrying us from the beginning to the end, and then to another beginning. The Norse people, who lived in lands of cold winds and long nights, looked to these stories to understand the world around them, to see in them the struggles, the beauty, and the harshness of life. They saw that everything had its time, that even gods were not eternal, and that endings were simply part of greater cycles. And now, as the story of their mythology comes to a close in our telling, it leaves us with the calm reminder that even in endings there is always something new, and that in the stillness of the night, the quiet of these myths can carry us gently towards sleep.